Much like the mysteries of space, there is still much to learn about sleep and specifically the effects that sleep deprivation and circadian shifts have on the astronauts as well as those of us here on Earth. Millions suffer from insomnia or sleep deprivation due to untreated sleep disorders. Untreated sleep disorders, including snoring, sleep apnea, disruptive movement disorders, and parasomnia, are characterized as abnormal behavior during sleep. Tragically, sleep deprivation and untreated sleep disorders can have serious and deadly consequences. Dr. Todd J. Swick, sleep medicine expert from Houston Neurology and Sleep Medicine Consultants, believes there is a direct correlation between the sleep research performed in space and the sleep research performed on Earth.
I've been interested in space travel from the time I was 9 years old, when I first heard that Sputnik was orbiting the Earth through the landing of Neil Armstrong on the moon in 1969, right through the launch and landing of Scott Kelly into the International Space Station. As a physician, I have seen the benefits of space travel translate to remarkably innovative materials and devices that have been invented for the use in space, but have now transitioned to use in everyday medical care. These have enabled patients to reap the benefits in hospital wards and operating rooms, in emergency rooms, and in emergency medical teams out in the field that have enabled patients' lives to be extended and all of our lives to be improved.
An extensive research laboratory aboard the International Space Station allows the scientists to continue their research to understand the basics of sleep and the dangers of sleep disorders such as sleep deprivation and fatigue on Earth and in space. Dr. Swick, can you expand upon how chronic sleep loss and fatigue may affect the space crew?
The study showed that the sleep loss that these astronauts suffered was chronic. Thus, we have to assume that there are probably multiple factors that are unique to space that are interfering with the space crew's normal sleep onset as well as maintenance. One explanation is that their body's internal clocks become misaligned. This timing effect is known as the development of our circadian rhythm. The word circadian comes from the Latin term circa, meaning approximately, and dies, meaning day. Our biologic clocks are in reality not quite 24 hours. They're actually about 12 minutes beyond 24 hours. So if you imagine a watch that's running 12 minutes fast every day, you have to reset it on a daily basis. We do that when we open our eyes every morning to bright, normal sunlight. In so doing, we turn off our sleep mechanism and we reset our clock. Now, this resetting takes place instantly, but it allows us to maintain a constant sleep-wake cycle. When an astronaut is in low orbit on the International Space Station, instead of one sunrise and one sunset for 24 hours, they experience 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets because the space station is circling the Earth every 1.5 hours.
Is there any evidence that sleep loss, fatigue, and circadian rhythm disturbances have resulted in actual performance decrements for the space crew members?
The evidence of loss of sleep development and development of fatigue and circadian desynchronization is not contested. What is unclear is, do these events and factors actually play a part in the overall performance of a crew member in space? Reports from veteran astronauts indicates that times of high-intensity workload can result in mental and physical fatigue. This, in conjunction with disturbed sleep, can lead to significant health issues, as well as performance errors, which in turn can cause increased incidence of injuries, accidents, and ultimately death.
Analysis of 78 individual crew members from 80 shuttle missions and 21 International Space Station missions found that on average the crew members log only 6 hours of sleep per night. Could you tell us some of the ways to mitigate these risks and to increase their sleep time?
We are all aware that we function best on a full night's sleep. The average sleep requirement, regardless of location, that is either on Earth or in space, has been identified at approximately 7 hours of uninterrupted sleep per night. Unfortunately, 10 years of data show that astronauts normally do not get enough sleep. Thus, their brain, instead of resetting itself once a day, now has no consistent reference point to establish a regular sleep-wake schedule. There are countermeasures that are under investigation, such as specific wavelength lighting and the use of specific light-blocking eyewear to better simulate the conditions on Earth.
We have heard that the work and rest activity needs to be monitored by the space crew. How does the Actigraph watch monitor this while on the space station?
The risks of cosmic radiation exposure and microgravity and their interaction on sleep-wake cycles and psychomotor performance are two major unknowns that need to be studied. Work-rest activity would need to be monitored during both short missions, and a mission to the moon is considered to be a short mission, as well as long missions. And these are, of course, missions that would entail traveling beyond the Earth-Moon orbit, perhaps to interplanetary destinations such as Mars or satellites of other planets in our solar system. This can be done using subjective evaluations derived from crew members' sleep logs, and every crew member has to keep a very thorough log of what they do, when they do it, and how they do it over the course of their day. But they're also aided with something that we use on Earth, and that is a little watch-like device. In fact, it is a wrist-worn device. It's called an actigraph that records movement, rest, and light exposure. The watch stores information for approximately 26 24-hour time cycles or days. A new battery is inserted after each incremental download, and the watch is taken off and stowed on the last day of the mission. This information is then analyzed for each of the crew members, and work-rest scheduling can be adjusted for better performance and sleep. Extravehicular activity, or EVAs, can occur at any time of the day or night. These are things that demand critical and emergency task focus by the crew. When this happens, the astronauts have given it a name. It's called slam shifting, and it represents another risk factor for circadian desynchronization. It's been estimated 13% of the days in space for astronauts involved slam shifts. Slam shifts also affect the ground teams that are supporting the space flight, when night shift work periods are required for people who are ordinarily accustomed to working during the day.
Are the sleep studies we perform on Earth like those we perform in space, acquiring many channels of data?
What we have on this screen is the patient is in rapid eye movement or REM sleep. And this is a very good example of it, where you have the eye movements that are rapid and they're out of sync. You have very low muscle activity here on the chin and here in the legs. You have a very good EKG rhythm here. But most importantly, what you have here on the brain waves is that this pattern looks very much like the individual is awake. And this is important because this is a dream state, but it's a dream state where the individual cannot act out their dreams. It allows the brain to take short-term memory and incorporate it into long-term memory, which is a very, very important part of REM sleep.
Who on Earth would experience the same circadian shift disruption similar to the astronauts?
A good comparator group here on Earth are those who engage in shift work, especially when they are working overnight shifts or rotating shifts. Shift work schedules are associated with increased risk of accidents and numerous injuries, both occurring before and after the work shift starts. And more recently, there's been some very good evidence that suggests that shift workers who are exposed to light at night suppress normal production of the dark hormone called melatonin, which is manufactured by the pineal gland. And over time, these individuals may increase their risk of developing cancer.
Failure is never an option in space. How do they best prepare for those out-of-the-box solutions?
We all remember what happened on Apollo 13, when literally all standard rules and regulations were disregarded because, as was aptly said at the ground station, failure is not an option. All stops were pulled out to get the crew safely back to Earth. Both the flight crew and the ground crew demonstrated incredible resourcefulness, ingenuity, and bravery to come up with the out-of-the-box solutions without regard to timing and work schedules. This ability to think on the fly, mentally and physically, allowed for the development of human health countermeasures to overcome risk factors that we discussed.
It's clear that the research performed on the International Space Station will continue to bring us insights on sleep and wake physiology in a microgravity environment and will further complement the continued research on Earth.
Patients suffering from insomnia, circadian rhythm disorders like shift workers or teenagers and young adults with delayed sleep phase syndrome, patients who have no light perception where they do not have the ability to reset their circadian rhythm on a daily basis, untreated sleep apnea patients who have disrupted sleep, patients who have periodic limb movements where they are jerking and twitching and uncomfortable all night. The research that is being done in space could have direct applicability for these individuals, and this is not a small number of sufferers. What we have to do is learn how we can control a very harsh and hostile environment, overcome those issues, and allow the astronauts to function better, and we can take that information and use it here on Earth.